Hello, and welcome back to the Calm and Connected podcast. I'm your host, Janine Halloran, and today I wanted to tackle an issue that keeps coming up wherever I am, whenever I'm talking with people about coping skills. So, one thing I often get when I'm giving a talk about coping skills or, posting something about it on Facebook, people will say, kids, we talk about it with them and, they know exactly what to do and they can tell me the words that they're supposed to use and the things that they're supposed to use. And then in the moment, they don't use it. Help. What do I do? How do I fix this? And I'm going to tell you what I tell other people when this comes up because it comes up pretty regularly. The first thing I like to do is just start by saying, kids are struggling with coping skills. Just because we introduce it to them doesn't mean that they're going to use it automatically, perfectly, with no problems, absolutely smoothly the first time we introduce it 100%. If it were that easy, then I could just give a kid a coping skills checklist and then my job would be done. But that's unfortunately not how it goes. Nobody, no human does anything 100% of the time. We as adults don't always use our healthy coping skills. So we have to also extend some grace to our children. They are little, they are learning how to manage their emotions, and they will make mistakes. And that's the time that we can help and help them figure out what to do. When they're little is a better time to teach them how to manage their emotions in a safe and healthy way rather than when they're bigger. So the first thing I like to explain is that it's not going to go smoothly, and don't expect it to go smoothly just because you start talking to a kid about coping skills. The second thing I like to do is really emphasize the importance of preventativeness. So instead of introducing a new coping skill to a kid when they are in the moment, that is not a helpful strategy. You want to introduce a new coping skill to a kid when they are calm. And I know it sounds kind of backwards, but it's really not. Think about it. When they are overwhelmed, when they are stressed out, when they are having a moment in fight, flight, or freeze, they cannot hear you. They cannot take any new information in. So for you to then try and introduce a new coping skill to them or suggest something to them at that point when they're really heightened and they've never heard it before, that's not going to be helpful for them. So it's really important to practice coping skills when kids are calm. You want them to have practiced it. You want them to know how it feels when they do it. You want them to identify that it's something that they like or that helps them, right? So in order to do that, you want them to be in a calm, relaxed state. The other thing that I like to make sure people think about is that when kids are in fight, flight, or freeze, or when they're really overwhelmed or really stressed out, they don't really respond as well to verbal cues as they do to nonverbal cues. So this is where visuals come into play in a huge way. Having a visual for a kid to look at instead of you trying to say something to them about why don't you use this coping strategy, you can seriously just point to it and see if that's going to give them a little bit more of an incentive to use it, or have them have it on a key ring where they can sort of flip through and look at and figure out which strategies are going to work for me right now. Having them up in a calm down space so they can look at it and say, okay, these are my choices. This is what I'm going to do. And again, just another reiteration. It doesn't mean just because you've suggested it and you've gone through it that it will go smoothly and they will use it all the time properly. They will not. But the thing that I want you to keep in mind is if they are doing something a little bit better, maybe the situation lasts shorter, maybe they get out of it a little bit quicker, maybe they use it for a minute and then stop. Whatever that tiny baby step is towards using that coping skill, encourage that, because that's the way they're going to get better at it, is if they try and they do a little bit and they get a little bit better and they try it for a little bit longer, or they try a different one and it works better. It is a work in progress. It is just kind of like parenting. There is a lot of trial and error when it comes to coping skills. So you have to try. They have to try. It may not go well, and that's okay, as long as they are heading in the right direction. The other thing that's really important is to reevaluate what happened, to talk about it after it's over. And I know sometimes it's really hard to talk about those really difficult, big, messy moments in life. And that's okay. But I think it's really important that you have the conversation with a child, because then you can start to talk about, in a sort of separated way. You're not in the moment. You're not heightened. Hopefully they're not heightened. And then you can have the conversation. Gosh, what happened? And help them figure out what were the triggers for that? What was something that was making you really upset? Can we talk about it? Can we process it? Can we figure out what was going on for you so that then we can make a better plan for the next time? And again, making the plan does not mean the plan will go 100% perfectly. But having the conversation with the kid, inviting the kid into the conversation, and having them really have some ownership in the plan makes a huge difference. Instead of us dictating to them, you should do these coping skills. No, it's really about them. Like, what strategies work for them? What strategies are safe and healthy and help them feel better? It may not be something that would be calming for us, but maybe it's calming for them, or maybe it's settling for them. Okay, as long as it does not hurt other people, does not hurt themselves, and does not damage property, go for it. So it really comes down to making sure that they have some ownership in it. And another thing that you can do is actually have kids make their own visuals for using their coping skills. So maybe you take a picture of them using their coping skill. Maybe you have them draw it or write it out, or they pick out whichever ones they want. It really becomes more about having them take some ownership of, I have control over my feelings. I can do something when I feel this way, and I can make myself feel better. So I hope that gives you a little bit of hope and gives you a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to working with really tough kids and their coping skills, and really improving and building on those coping skills. If you like this podcast, feel free to share it with your friends and colleagues and give us a rating and review wherever you listen to the podcast. And I just want you to think about one last thing. Don't forget about yourself. Take a few minutes, have a little fun, have an awesome day.